Hello friends, welcome to the session on collective bargaining. In this session, we will be learning problems and essentials of collective bargaining. This topic is important to learn as it is important in HRM subject, and most importantly, it helps to ensure the industrial relations. Collective bargaining is to resolve the issues that exist between employer and employee. It reinstates the harmony and industrial relations. Let us understand what are the pros and cons of collective bargaining. The collective bargaining is the concept has its own merits and demerits. Here are its key advantages. It avoids unnecessarily legal proceedings and the issue is sorted out of the court. It promotes workers' democracy and workers' participation in management. It helps in establishing harmonious relationship between employee and employer. It emphasizes on the interest and benefits of both the parties. It helps us to eliminate unnecessary expenditure and avoids bitterness among involved parties. Collective bargaining agreements or contracts help to guide standards. It opens participation in decision-making process. All union members and management must conform to the terms of contract without exception. This process exists to question managers' authority if members feel something was done unjustly. It can lead to high performance workplace where labor and management jointly engage in problem solving and addressing issues on an equal standing. It promotes fairness and consistency in employment policies and personal decisions within the different organizations. Along with the advantages, now let us understand the disadvantages of collective bargaining. Increased wages and improved facilities for workers will directly result in high prices for goods and services. Consumers are affected badly due to the price rise, a process which they do not actively participate in. The collective bargaining process may not be fair at all times. The decision is often influenced by power and politics. In case of failure of the collective bargaining agreement, the immediate consequence is a strike or lockout. It reduces individuality. All union members and management must conform to the terms of contract without exception. In collective bargaining, everyone involved must pay union dues even if they do not support unionization. It helps us to create significant potential for polarization between employees and managers. Collective bargaining is we are talking about the disadvantages. Because of it, increased wages and improved facilities for workers can directly or indirectly result in high prices for goods and services. One more disadvantage is that restricts management's ability to deal effectively with a troubled employee individually. Friends, once we talk about the advantages and disadvantages, at the same time, there are certain problems which are there with collective bargaining. And let us discuss about those. Due to the dominance of outsiders in trade unionism in the country, there is a multiplicity of unions which are weak and unstable and do not represent majority of the employees. Moreover, there are inter-union rivalries which further hinder the process of collective bargaining between the labor and the management. Trade unions are having political affiliations. They continue to be dominated by politicians who use the unions and their members to meet their political ends. There is a lack of definite procedure to determine which union is to be recognized to serve as a bargaining agent on behalf of the workers. It is also seen that there has been very close association between trade union and political parties. As a result, trade union movement has leaned towards political orientation rather than collective bargaining. Friends, along with this, there are some other major problems of collective bargaining. The major emphasis of both, that is union and employers, is to settle the disputes through adjudication rather than sorting out the issues among themselves. Whatever bargaining takes place, it is limited to large plants only. Smaller organizations generally do not prefer this form of handling the issues. Several factors are responsible for this state of affairs. Due to the dominance of outsiders in trade unionism in the country, there is multiplicity of unions which are weak and unstable and do not represent majority of the employees. Moreover, there are inter-union rivalries which further hinder the process of collective bargaining between the labor and the management. Since most of the trade unions are having political affiliations, they continue to be dominated by politicians who use the unions and their members to meet their political ends. There is a lack of definite procedure to determine which union is to be recognized to serve as a bargaining agent on behalf of the workers. In India, the law provides an easy access to adjudication. Under the Industrial Dispute Act, the parties to the dispute may request the government to refer the matter to adjudication, and the government will constitute the adjudication machinery, that is labor court or industrial tribunal. Thus, the faith in the collective bargaining process is discouraged. There has been very close association between the trade unions and political parties. So, as a result, trade union movement has leaned towards political orientation rather than collective bargaining. Collective bargaining can help to bring industrial peace in our country by promoting mutual understanding and cooperation between workers and managements. It provides a framework for deciding the terms and conditions of employment without resorting to strikes and lockouts and without the intervention of outsiders. The management and the union can develop a matured relationship. Instead of fighting amongst themselves, they should work towards the betterment of the organization. Now friends, let us understand the various factors that are inhibiting the collective bargaining. Collective bargaining has not made much headway in India when compared to other industrialized nations. The reasons for this are employers' reluctance. Employers have failed to read the mind and expectations of employee. They do not appreciate the fact that unions have come to stay with almost equal bargaining strength. Such negative attitudes have come in the way of negotiating with unions voluntarily. Second one is weak unions. The percentage of total workforce in India has unionized a figure which is much lower in comparison to developed countries. The trade union membership rarely includes a majority of workers. In addition to poor membership figures, unions have to live with poor finances as well. To complicate matters further, there are multiple unions with multifarious political affiliations. All these factors have cumulatively reduced the bargaining strength of unions in India. Next one is inadequate intervention. The regulatory framework covering the industrial relations scene is quite tight, leaving very little room for bargaining to flourish on a voluntary basis. In case there is a war of nerves between management and labor, government steps in to resolve the issue. The legislative means offered through conciliation or adjudication may not help matters either. The absence of appropriate legislative provisions recognizing a bargaining agent has added fuel to the fire on a number of occasions. No attempt has been made by the government to rationalize or simplify the multifarious laws covering management, labor relations even after half a century of inactivity. Employers in India face certain practical problems as well. Quite often, they are not very sure about who is the recognized bargaining agent. When there are multiple unions, bargaining with one union may prove to be a tough battle. The awards of wage boards come in the way of negotiating freely, keeping the plant industry level conditions in the mind. The areas of collective bargaining have not grown in a view of the encouragement given to wage boards, pay commissions, statutory fixation of other conditions of work and social security measures. Having understood all these problems, now let us understand then how to overcome this. So, we are going to talk on the success of collective bargaining and on what it depends on. The first one is a strong trade union. A strong and stable representative trade union is essential for effective collective bargaining. For having trade union, workers should have freedom to unionize so that they can exercise their right of unionization and form a trade union for the purpose of electing their representatives for collective bargaining. A weak union not enjoying the support of majority of workers is not likely to be effective. The management will not negotiate with such a union because mutual agreements are not likely to be honored by a large section of the labor force. Moreover, there is always a danger that non-union members may sabotage it. The next one is compulsory recognition of trade unions. There must be an acceptable and recognized bargaining agent. That means that there must be recognized union or unions to negotiate the terms and conditions of the agreement with the management. Please understand that the process of collective bargaining cannot begin until unions are recognized by the employers. Employers will give such recognition only if they believe it to be in their interest or if it is a legal requirement. A strong, stable and the most representative union should be recognized by the employers for the purpose, because any agreement with that union will be acceptable to majority of workers and it will help in establishing sound industrial relations in the organization. The next success factor for your collective bargaining is mutual accommodation. There has to be a greater emphasis on mutual accommodation rather than conflict or uncompromising attitude. Conflicting attitude does not lead to amicable labor relations. It may foster union militancy as the union reacts by engaging in pressure tactics. The approach must be of mutual give and take rather than take or leave. The take or leave philosophy is followed in America where there is contractual labor. As of now, this is not the case in India. So, if the union and the management have to look for a long-term relationship, they have to respect each other's right. Mutual trust and confidence, again one of the important successful factor. Trade unions and management must accept each other as a responsible parties in collective bargaining process. There should be mutual trust and confidence. In fact, in any relationship, trust is the most important factor. Management must accept the union as the official representative. The union must accept the management as the primary planners and controllers of the company's operations. The union must not feel that management is working and seeking the opportunity to undermine and eliminate the labor organization. The company management must not feel that the union is seeking to control every facet of the company's operations. The next factor which we want to talk about is efficient bargaining mechanism. In this, no ad hoc arrangements are satisfactory for the reason that bargaining is a continuing process. An agreement is merely a framework for everyday working relationships. The main bargain is carried on daily, and for this there is a need to have a permanent machinery. As for the machinery being efficient, it has three aspects: availability of full information, selection of proper representatives, recognition of natural temperament of each other. So, we have to keep this in mind when we are doing collective bargaining. Now, let us understand the next factor, that is emphasis on problem solving attitude. There should be an emphasis upon problem solving approach with a de-emphasis upon excessive legalism. Litigation leads to loss of time and energy and it does not benefit anyone. Therefore, the emphasis is to look for mutually acceptable solutions rather than creating problems for each other. Lastly, the overall political environment should be congenial. The political environment should support collective bargaining. Both management and employees' attitude should be positive and have an intention to find the better solution. In the process of bargaining, both should be prepared to give away something in order to gain something, as they may have diverse interests. The next one is political climate in the organization. For effective collective bargaining in a country, it is important to have sound political climate. The government must be convinced that the method of arriving at the agreements through mutual voluntary negotiations is best for regulating certain conditions of employment. Therefore, positive attitude of the political parties is must for the promotion of collective bargaining. Such an approach would help and encourage the development of strong, stable and representative trade unions, growth of mechanism for the resolution of industrial conflict, recognition of unions, etc. Now friends, let us understand the conditions essential for effective collective bargaining. Not all the collective bargaining processes are successful and effective. There are certain prerequisites for an effective bargaining process, which are unanimity amongst the worker. Before entering into negotiation, there must be unanimity amongst the workers. At least the representatives of workers should be able to present the opinion or demand of majority of workers, or else the management can take advantage of diverse demands of the workers. Next one is strength of both the parties. Both the parties in negotiations should be equal in strength. One party dominating the other is against the whole nature of collective bargaining. It should always be a give and take process and should not be a you give and we take or you bargain and we collect process from either side. Next one is both the parties should observe and follow the terms and conditions of previous agreements. Collective bargaining is a continuous process and effective only with the successful implementation of previous agreements. If there is a lapse on the part of any party, it shows its effect on the present process of collective bargaining. The next one is the representatives of both the parties should understand and be clear about the problems and their effect. The representatives should have some authority to make minor changes in terms and conditions. The next one is workers can make effective use of the collective bargaining process to achieve participative management and good working conditions. Workers should not confine to the monetary benefits. Next one is both the parties should have mutual trust and confidence and respect for each other. They should exhibit the willingness to settle the matters through the negotiations. The process of bargaining should be free from the unfair practices and conflict. Each party should respect the rights and responsibilities of the other party. Now let us understand the few suggestions for effective implementation of collective bargaining. In industry, unions should be made strong by creating awareness amongst workers. Interference of political leaders should separate themselves from politics. Government should make efforts for the growth of collective bargaining. Adjudication should be used only as a last resort. Government can make legislation for compulsory collective bargaining before resorting to adjudication. Management should develop a positive attitude towards unions. Much headway has already been made in this direction. Presently, managers are mostly aware of the rights of the workers. They are also realizing how important is cooperation between management and workers for the effective functioning of an organization. Managers are now encouraging negotiations and amicable solutions. Let us understand recommendations of National Commission on Labour. In the year 1969, National Commission on Labour made recommendations after understanding the problems. These recommendations are government intervention in industrial relations, especially in the settlement of industrial disputes should be reduced. Compulsory adjudication of disputes should be used as a last resort or solution. trade unions should be strengthened financially and organizationally by amending the Trade Union Act 1926 to make registration of unions compulsory, enhance membership fee, reduce the presence of the outsiders in the union executives and in the office bearers, and increase the minimum number of members in respect of union applying for registration. The legal provision may be made either by a separate legislation or by amending an existing enactment for compulsory recognition of trade unions and certification of unions and bargaining agent. Next one is for prohibitions and penalization of unfair labor practices. The next one is bargaining in good faith by both employers and unions. Next one is conferring legal validity and legitimacy on collective agreements. Intensification of workers' education for building internal union leadership and making workers more knowledgeable about their rights and obligations. These efforts will help to reduce the politics and union rivalry. Next one recommendation is the government should declare its policy to allow and encourage settling the dispute and conflict through bipartite consultation and negotiation. Friends, to conclude the topic collective bargaining is the process by which the representatives of management and workers negotiate the terms and conditions of employment. To strengthen the collective bargaining, both parties should carry out negotiations in an atmosphere of mutual trust and faith. All issues that are controversial must be put to an open debate, encourage the active participation and suggestions from workers. The agreements should be agreed, adhered and implemented. So friends, thank you so much.